Donald Trump and his administration knew before they shipped 238 Venezuelan immigrants to a prison in El Salvador that the vast majority of those young men had never been convicted of a crime. Homeland Security records reveal that officials knew more than half of the 238 deportees were labeled as having no criminal record in the United States and had only violated immigration laws, which is a civil matter. This is reporting today from ProPublica. The Trump administration knew that the vast majority of the 238 Venezuelan immigrants it sent to a maximum security prison in El Salvador, CECOT prison, where presumably they're going to rot for the rest of their lives, in mid-March, had not been convicted of any crimes in the United States before it labeled these men as terrorists and deported them, according to U.S. Department of Homeland Security data that has not been previously reported. President Trump and his aides have branded these Venezuelans as rapists, savages, monsters, the worst of the worst. When multiple news organizations disputed those assertions with reporting that showed many of the deportees did not have any criminal records, the administration doubled down. It said that its assessment of the deportees was based on a thorough vetting process that included looking at crimes committed both inside and outside the United States. But the government's own data, which was obtained by ProPublica, the Texas Tribune, and a team of journalists from Venezuela, showed that officials knew that only 32 of the 238 deportees had been convicted of crimes in the United States, and that most of those were nonviolent offenses such as retail theft or traffic violations. The data indicates that the government knew that only 6 of the 238 immigrants had been convicted of violent crimes, 4 for assault, 1 for kidnapping, and 1 for a weapons offense. And it shows that officials were aware that more than half, over 130 of the deportees, were not labeled as having any criminal convictions or pending charges anywhere. As for foreign offense, that paragraph doesn't matter. ProPublica conducted a case-by-case review of all the Venezuelan deportees. It's possible that there are crimes and other information in the deportees' backgrounds that did not show up in the reporting. But everything we did find in public records contradicted the Trump administration's assertions. ProPublica and other news organizations also obtained lists of alleged gang members that are kept by Venezuelan law enforcement officials and the international law enforcement agency Interpol. Those lists include some 1,400 names. None of the names of the 238 Venezuelan deportees matched any name on those lists. The hasty removal of the Venezuelans and their incarceration in a third country has made this one of the most consequential deportations in recent history. The court battles over whether Trump has the authority to expel immigrants without judicial review, without due process, have the potential to upend how this country handles all immigrants living in the United States, whether here legally or illegally. Officials have suggested publicly that to achieve the president's goals of deporting millions of immigrants, the administration was considering suspending habeas corpus, the long-standing constitutional right allowing people to challenge their detention. Hours before these immigrants were loaded onto airplanes in Texas for deportation, the Trump administration invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, declaring that Tren de Aragua prison gang had invaded the United States, aided by the Venezuelan government. That's since been shot down by at least 2 judges. It branded the gang a foreign terrorist organization and said that the declaration gave the president the authority to expel the gang members and send them indefinitely to a foreign prison, where they have remained for almost 3 months with no ability to communicate with their families or their lawyers. White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson said in response to ProPublica's findings that, quote, ProPublica should be embarrassed that they are doing the bidding of criminal illegal aliens who are a threat, adding that the American people strongly support the president's immigration agenda. She left off the fact that a large majority of the American population are complete fucking morons. When asked about the difference between the administration's public statements about the deportees and the way they were labeled in government data, DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin, she's a real treat, largely repeated previous public statements. She insisted without evidence that the deportees were dangerous, saying these individuals categorized as non-criminals are actually terrorists, human rights abusers, and gang members, and more. They just don't have arrest records in the United States. How do they know that? Prove it. Prove it through due process. Our investigation focused on the 238 Venezuelan men who were deported on March 15th to CECOT, the prison in El Salvador, and whose names were on a list first published by CBS News. The government has also sent several dozen other immigrants there, including Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran man who the government admitted was sent there in error. Courts have ruled that the administration should facilitate his return to the United States. ProPublica interviewed about 100 of the deportees' relatives and attorneys. Many of them had heard from their loved ones on the morning of March 5th, when the men believed they were being sent back to Venezuela. They were happy because they would be back home with their families, who were eager to prepare their favorite meals and plan parties. Some of the relatives shared video messages with ProPublica and on social media that were recorded inside U.S. detention facilities. In those videos, the detainees said they were afraid they might be sent to Guantanamo. The Trump administration had sent planes carrying Venezuelans to Guantanamo Bay earlier this year. The men had no idea they were being sent to El Salvador. Among them was 31-year-old Leonardo Jose Colmenares Solorzano, who left Venezuela and his job as a youth soccer coach last July. His sister said he had a hard time supporting himself and his mother, and that Venezuela's crumbling economy made it hard for him to find a better job. He was detained at an appointment to approach the U.S.-Mexico border in October because of his many tattoos, including one inspired by the Real Madrid soccer club's logo. He was not flagged as having a criminal history in the DHS data obtained by ProPublica. They found no evidence of any criminal record for him in the United States or in Venezuela. His sister has been heartsick ever since he was detained. She's unable to sleep. And there's case after case after case after case like this. Michael Gabriel Lopez Lozano, 23, was arrested in Chicago in August 2023 on misdemeanor charges for riding his bicycle on the sidewalk while drinking a can of Budweiser. His girlfriend, Cherry Flores, described his deportation as a gross injustice. They shouldn't have sent him to CECOT. Why did they have to take him there over a beer? The Trump administration has known from day one that only 6 out of these 238 young men had criminal records for violent crimes. There are about 30 more who had minor or misdemeanor nonviolent criminal offenses such as traffic citations or shoplifting. The rest of them, almost 200, have no criminal charge, no criminal record in the United States or Venezuela, and they sent them to CECOT prison in El Salvador for life anyway.